Before we dive in, tell me where you're listening from and what pulled you into this story. If it spoke to you, drop a comment. Your words help keep history's forgotten voices alive.
Picture Paris at midnight. Not the postcard version, but the real one. The one with alleys that smell like wine and danger. The one where aristocrats stumble out of masked balls and duelists settle arguments with steel instead of apologies. A crowd has gathered in a courtyard behind the Palais Royal. Moonlight glints off drawn swords. 3 noblemen stand in a semicircle, confident, tipsy, and very sure that honor is on their side. Across from them stands one person, a woman. Barely 20, hair tied back with a ribbon like she's about to sing, not fight. But the sword in her hand? That's held like a promise. Her name is Julie d'Aubigny, La Maupin, and tonight she will do what she always does, turn disaster into performance. The first man lunges, metal rings, sparks jump. Julie steps aside, light as a dancer, deadly as a blade. She laughs, actually laughs, as she drives him back. The second charges. The third hesitates. And Paris, watching from the shadows, suddenly knows the rumor is true. This woman is either blessed by the devil or kissed by God. Maybe both. Before dawn, all 3 men will bleed, the king will demand answers, and Julie will disappear into the night with a smirk, like she's running late for an encore. And you? You're left wondering how a girl born into a world where women were expected to sit down and look pretty ended up rewriting the rules with a sword in one hand and a lover in the other. To understand Julie d'Aubigny, you have to go back, before the duels, before the opera, before the scandal, to a little girl training with men twice her height, learning to fight in a world that can't decide whether to adore her or fear her. That's where the legend starts.
Julie d'Aubigny.
The blade, the voice, the scandal. The woman who refused the script, the making of a menace. Julie d'Aubigny didn't grow up like other girls. She grew up in a fencing hall, where the air smelled like sweat, steel, and men shouting challenges at each other for fun. Her father was Gaston d'Aubigny, a master of arms whose students included half the noble brats at King Louis XIV's glittering, corrupted court. He raised Julie the same way he taught his boys: footwork, blade work, discipline, posture. No dolls, no embroidery, no act like a lady. He handed her a practice sword before she could spell her own name, and she adored it. She learned to parry before she learned to curtsy. She learned to swear before she learned to pray. By 13, she could humiliate grown men with a flick of her wrist, and did, often, especially when they underestimated her. It didn't take long for the palace to notice the girl who moved like a sparkle of danger in the training hall. Courtiers would lean over railings whispering, "Who is that?" "That's d'Aubigny's daughter." "Beautiful, isn't she?" "Terrifying, actually." 2 truths formed early. 1. Men loved looking at her. 2. Men hated losing to her even more. And Julie noticed something too, something that shaped her forever. When boys broke rules, people laughed. When girls broke rules, people gasped. Julie learned to love the gasp. She became bold, brazen, magnetic. A girl who rode too fast, argued too loudly, and never apologized. Court ladies whispered that she was improper. Court men whispered that she was tempting. At 14, she crossed the line everyone warned her about. She fell into a love affair with her father's employer, the Comte d'Armagnac, a powerful man, older, married, and so smitten with her that he practically glowed. It was a scandal waiting to explode. And it did. The rumors spread like wildfire. The sword girl, the wild one, the girl who didn't know how to behave. But Julie wasn't embarrassed. She was evolving. Court society tried to shame her into silence, into obedience, into shrinking. Instead, she sharpened herself. Her childhood ended the moment she realized something. Women like her weren't meant to survive, so she would have to do it loudly. And the world, from swordsmen to opera houses to entire convents, was about to learn what it meant to underestimate Julie d'Aubigny. The duelist and the fugitive. Julie d'Aubigny was never built for quiet scandal. She didn't do secrets softly. When she fell in love, she fell like someone leaping off a burning roof, with certainty, fire, and absolutely no concern for the consequences. She was about 16 when she met the girl who would blow her life apart. No one remembers the girl's name. History forgot her. But Julie didn't. The girl was beautiful, delicate, soft-spoken, everything Julie was not. And Julie, raised on swordplay and survival, was stunned to find a kind of gentleness she didn't know how to hold. They became inseparable within weeks. It would have been a sweet teenage romance, if it hadn't been France, if Julie hadn't been Julie, and if the girl's parents hadn't reacted exactly as expected. They locked the girl in a convent, not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. A real convent, behind real walls, with real nuns watching her like prison guards. Julie, for her part, reacted exactly as expected. She broke in. Posing as a novice named Sister Julie, because subtlety was not something God gifted her, she blended herself among the nuns with a kind of chaotic sincerity. She prayed, she sang hymns, she helped in the kitchen, and every night she slipped into her lover's room. The convent didn't stand a chance. They should have seen it coming, the whispered giggles, the suspiciously joyful novice, the way two girls kept arriving late to Mass looking too pleased with themselves. But they didn't, and Julie took full advantage. Then came the escape. And this is where the story crosses the line from rebellious young woman into "are you kidding me" territory. To flee the convent undetected, Julie came up with a plan so deranged it's almost poetic. Step 1. Steal the body of a recently deceased nun. Step 2. Place it in her lover's bed. Step 3. Set the room on fire. Step 4. Escape in the chaos. No one writes scripts like this. Not fiction, not Hollywood, only Julie d'Aubigny. When the flames tore through the dormitory, bells rang, sisters screamed, and the convent erupted into righteous panic. The body in the bed, now charred and unrecognizable, was mistaken for Julie's lover. Authorities believed the girl died. Julie fled. Case closed. And Julie? She rode off with her girlfriend into the night, fleeing through fields and forests with the fire behind her, reflecting in her eyes like a warning. It didn't last long. The girl, frightened by the law and her family, eventually returned home. Julie, heartbroken but undeterred, became a fugitive, wanted for kidnapping, arson, corpse desecration, blasphemy, violating convent walls, and crimes against nature. She was now officially too scandalous to stay put, so she did what she always did. She reinvented herself. She wandered the countryside, challenging men to duels for money, performing sword tricks in taverns, singing in cabarets, scandalizing village after village with her talent, her temper, her beauty, and her refusal to bend. When someone mocked her, she fought them. When someone flirted, she kissed them. When someone threatened her, they usually regretted it. Men tried to claim she was wicked. Women whispered she was free. And somewhere along the road, with a half-broken guitar slung over her shoulder and a stolen horse at her side, Julie realized something. She didn't need a convent escape or a forbidden lover to be extraordinary. She already was. By the time she reached Paris again, her reputation had become a myth, carried by gossip, fear, and admiration. Little did she know, her next transformation would take place not with a sword, but on a stage. The opera sensation. Paris didn't know what was coming. When Julie d'Aubigny rode back into the city, she was 20-ish, penniless, infamous, and dressed like someone who had survived more adventures than a musketeer with a gambling problem. She had a sword at her hip, a guitar strapped across her back, and a swagger that made respectable people clutch their pearls out of both fear and fascination. The Paris Opera, surprisingly, was exactly the place for a woman like that. It started as an accident, or fate, depending on how you tell the story. Julie had been performing in taverns, dueling on street corners, and using her voice to earn coins when a minor composer overheard her. He didn't care that she looked like trouble. He didn't care that she traveled armed. He didn't care about the convent fire, or the corpse, or the girlfriend, or the trail of wounded egos she left behind her. He heard her sing, and that was enough. Her voice wasn't refined, it wasn't courtly, it wasn't delicate, it was wild, powerful, fierce. It was a battle cry disguised as a soprano. It cracked like lightning and rolled like thunder. Within weeks, she was in rehearsals. Within months, she was on stage. Within a year, Paris renamed her La Maupin. And this new version of Julie? She didn't fade into the theatre crowd. She devoured it. She stole scenes. She stole hearts. She stole the breath from audiences who came expecting opera and got a hurricane in human form instead. Her presence on stage was explosive, and what she did offstage made her legend unstoppable. The affairs that became folklore. Julie collected lovers the way nobles collected property, not discreetly and not slowly. Actresses? Yes. Aristocratic wives? Absolutely. Swordsmen, poets, musicians. If they were beautiful or interesting, she tried them at least once. She wasn't crude about it. She was magnetic. Charisma wrapped in chaos. Confidence dipped in danger. People said she could seduce anyone, and if she couldn't seduce them, she could beat them in a duel. And sometimes she did both. One actress rejected her once. Just once. Julie responded by appearing at her door dressed as a man, serenading her under her window until the woman laughed and invited her inside. By morning, they were lovers. When the actress left her months later for a man, Julie hunted the man down and challenged him to a duel. She won. Then she returned to the actress and said, "I won her for you." The actress did not take her back. Even Julie's romantic gestures tended to come with collateral damage. But the story made its way through Paris like wildfire.
The Royal Ball and the three-man duel.
This is the moment that pushed her from scandal into outright legend. One night, at a masked ball hosted by King Louis XIV, Julie arrived in men's clothing, elegant, tailored, and more flattering on her than on any man in the room. She kissed a noblewoman in front of everyone. 3 men, suitors of the woman, were outraged. They challenged her. Individually? No. All 3 at once. Julie accepted. They stepped into the courtyard. Masks came off. Swords came out. A ring of nobles formed around them. She fought like she was born for it. And maybe she was. Her footwork was dance. Her blade, poetry. Her confidence, devastating. 1 man fell. Then another. Then the 3rd. None died, but all 3 bled. And all 3 learned the same lesson. Do not pick a fight with a woman who has nothing to lose. Louis XIV was impressed, amused, and furious. Dueling was illegal. Kissing another woman in front of his court, even more scandalous. Julie was exiled. Paris wept. Not literally, Parisians don't weep openly, but opera-goers cursed the king under their breath, playwrights mourned their living inspiration, and women complained loudly that the most interesting person in France had been driven away. The return. The exile didn't last. Julie couldn't stay away from performance, and Paris couldn't stay away from her. Demand grew. Public pressure built. Whispers reached the opera house. And finally, reluctantly, authorities annulled her punishment. She walked back into the city the way stars do in movies. Slow, dramatic, knowing she'd been missed. Paris acted shocked. Paris acted offended. Paris acted appalled. But Paris also bought every ticket the opera put on sale. Julie d'Aubigny was back. A storm wearing a soprano's gown. A swordswoman singing love arias. A scandal with stage presence. She was at the height of her fame. She had lovers, fame, applause, freedom, everything she was born for. But fame is like fire. It burns bright, and then it begins to eat what holds it. Julie's story was about to turn again, not with a duel or a scandal, but with something she never learned to guard against. Love. Real love.
The Last Romance and the Last Duels.
Julie d'Aubigny never intended to fall in love. Lust? Absolutely. She could fall into that 3 times before breakfast. Obsession? Without hesitation. But love, real love, the kind that softens the sharp edges, that asks vulnerability instead of performance, that wasn't something she made room for, until she met La Marquise de Florensac. No one wrote enough about Florensac. History remembers her only in the margins, like a footnote to Julie's chaos, but in truth, she was the one woman Julie never tried to impress, because she didn't have to. Florensac was elegant without cruelty, wealthy without arrogance, learned without condescension. She was calm where Julie was wildfire, soft where Julie was steel. And instead of being dazzled by Julie's bravado, she saw through it, right to the lonely, brilliant girl who had been fighting since childhood. For once, Julie didn't have to seduce, she didn't have to perform. She could just be. The opera world gasped when they appeared together. Florensac was nobility, Julie was scandal incarnate, dressed in breeches one night and an opera gown the next, kissing whomever she pleased and challenging men to duels for looking at her wrong. But Florensac didn't care. She adored her. And Julie, the duelist, the fugitive, the fire starter, adored her back with the ferocity of someone who had never known safety before. Their home became a brief sanctuary. No swords, no disguises, no threats. Just two women sharing meals, books, evenings by candlelight. A softness Julie had never tasted and secretly feared she didn't deserve. For the first time in her life, she stopped running. And then, suddenly, brutally, without reason or warning, Florensac died. Some said illness. Some whispered poisoning, old rivalries, jealous husbands, political enemies. No one ever proved anything. But the truth didn't matter. Julie shattered. The woman who had fought 3 men at once without flinching, who had burned down a convent to save a lover, who had stood on the Paris opera stage like a goddess. That woman was gone. In her place stood grief. Grief turned her blade reckless. Grief cracked her voice. Grief hollowed her like a burned-out theatre. Julie tried to fill the void with danger. She dueled more often, with less restraint. She drank too much. She arrived late to rehearsals, weeping in the wings, wiping tears with the back of the same hand that had once held an axe of defiance. The roles that once fit her now felt too tight, too bright, too heavy.
Rumors spread. La Maupin is slipping. She misses cues. She fights like she wants to die.
The Paris Opera, the same place that had once been her kingdom, quietly began replacing her with younger, steadier singers. Audiences still loved her, but they could hear the break in her voice, see the tremor in her hands. Julie was fading, and Paris, as always, moved on. She tried to reclaim her fire, tried to duel the sorrow out of herself, tried to seduce it away, drink it away, outrun it. But heartbreak was the one opponent she couldn't outfight. After her last performance, a night where she sang beautifully, then broke down in the dressing room, she walked out of the opera and never returned. No duel, no scandal, no dramatic exit. Just a woman who'd lost the one thing she couldn't burn her way back to. She drifted from Paris, then from her friends, then from the world. She was still Julie, still brilliant, still dangerous, still unforgettable. But she was tired, and grief had clawed her hollow. At 33, she entered a convent, the same kind of place she had once set ablaze, not to hide, but because it was the only place quiet enough for her ghosts. And there, without fanfare, she died. No sword, no stage, no scandal, just silence. The one thing she never learned how to fight. Julie d'Aubigny lived like a myth, but died like a mortal, and yet her legend outlived her by centuries. Because you can kill a woman, but you cannot kill a woman who lived as if rules were suggestions, gender was a costume, and fear was someone else's problem.
The end of the comet. Julie d'Aubigny died quietly, but her legend refused to behave. No one expected that. History usually rewards women who obeyed, submitted, married well, or died tragically, not women who set convents on fire, sang like a storm, fought like a soldier, seduced indiscriminately, and walked through life with the swagger of a man who had never been told No. But Julie? Julie lingered. Not in the official records. Those were polite, sanitized, barely acknowledging what she truly was, but in the whispers, the tavern stories, the scandal sheets, the opera gossip, the fencing manuals, the memoirs of aristocrats who were too embarrassed to name her, but too haunted to forget her. Her legend walked ahead of her history, always larger, always brighter. The myth that grew after her. Every generation added a layer. Some said she fought 42 duels, others claimed she dressed exclusively as a man. Some insisted she was an assassin. Others said she seduced a queen. One biographer swore she once swallowed burning coals because a man dared her to. Are all of these true? Probably not. But that's not the point. Julie lived so boldly that exaggeration felt like the only way to capture her. She wasn't a woman dragged into myth. She was a woman who invited it. And yet, underneath all the flourishes and bravado, there's something deeper, something the myths accidentally reveal. Julie d'Aubigny lived the way men were allowed to, but women never were. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't fear scandal. She didn't apologize for existing. She didn't shrink. And for that, history didn't know what to do with her. The modern lens, why she still matters. Julie isn't remembered because she dueled. She isn't remembered because she sang. She isn't even remembered because she loved recklessly and defiantly. She's remembered because she broke categories. She was bisexual before the word existed. She was gender non-conforming before anyone debated it. She lived with a man's freedom and a woman's vulnerability. She blurred lines society insisted were natural. She showed that courage can be messy, chaotic, and deeply human. And she did all of it in the 1600s, when most women weren't allowed to own property, let alone their own faces, bodies, or desires. Julie was a rebellion with a pulse, a walking contradiction, fighter and singer, saint and outlaw, hero and menace. She didn't represent anything. She wasn't trying to. She simply lived the way she wanted to live, consequences be damned. And that, more than anything, is why her legend still crackles. Because she was the kind of woman who isn't supposed to survive in the history books. And yet, she did. She carved her name in sword strokes and scandal, in arias and ashes, in defiance and desire.
The final truth.
History couldn't contain her. Imagine the convent on her final night. No audience, no applause, no lovers waiting outside. Just Julie, still fierce, still proud, still unmistakably herself, whispering prayers she once mocked, knowing the world outside was still telling her story, still arguing about her, still unsure whether to condemn her or crown her. She didn't die a monster. She didn't die a hero. She didn't die a tragedy. She died human, something she never pretended not to be. And yet, the handful of nuns who tended her body would never have guessed that the woman they buried would one day become a symbol for queer freedom, female autonomy, defiance of gender norms, artistic genius, and the chaotic beauty of living without fear. Julie d'Aubigny is a reminder of everything a woman can be when the world stops telling her what she's allowed to be, or when she stops listening. Her story ends in silence, yes, but her legend? That still sings, loud, wild, and impossible to ignore.
And that's where we leave her, on the page, in the archive, in the rumor, in the shadow she carved into history. Maybe she was a villain. Maybe she was a victim. Maybe she was something far more dangerous, a woman who refused the role she was handed. But one thing is certain, the world wasn't ready for her then, and it still isn't now. If you enjoyed falling down this rabbit hole of power, defiance, and the women history tried to bury, make sure you're here for the next chapter, because there are more of them, more rebels, more survivors, more legends disguised as scandals. Until next time, keep questioning the stories you were told, and keep an eye on the women they warned you about.